Press record. So, welcome to Master Your Hormones. It's October, which is Menopause Awareness Month. So, I thought it would be really good to do this information session to help women to understand what's going on with their hormones, because it's an area that we don't actually talk about a lot. And certainly before I began on this journey, I didn't really understand how my hormones work. So I'm hoping that by the end of this session, you'll have a bit more of an understanding, if you don't already, of what's going on with your hormones during this sort of transitional phase. So for those of you who don't know me, and I know quite a lot of people are going to be catching up on the replay of this because they couldn't make it live tonight. So hello to you too. My name is Caroline Woolley, and I am the founder of the Peacock Retreat Natural Wellbeing for Midlife and Menopause, and I'm based in Hibblestone, North Lincolnshire. But I work with women across the country, really, anybody who's in the sort of 35 age group plus, who is facing some challenges with their hormones, with their well-being, their stress management, their sleep, or any of the other challenges that hit us as women in our 40s and 50s and beyond. So yeah, my aim is to try and help women to re-find their calm, their confidence, and their sparkle, because this is not the end of the road for us as women, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we go through this. I really think that we deserve to have a menopause transition that works for us as women and that empowers us, and that actually, this is not the end. It is a second spring, as we would say in Chinese medicine. It's not about losing yourself, it's about coming back to who you really are. So that's what I really believe. So I'll just move the slide. There we go. So just so we're all on the same page, I'm just going to go back, and a lot of you may know this already, but actually just to state clearly for everyone, what is menopause? So menopause is actually just one date. It's one day that is 12 months after your last menstrual cycle. So it's just that one day. And then the whole of the period of hormonal fluctuation that runs up to that we call perimenopause. And perimenopause can last anywhere from sort of 10 to 15 years, we're saying now. Typically, it starts at about 45, and the average age of menopause in the UK is about 51, 52. But actually, people can start to experience hormonal fluctuations and perimenopausal symptoms as early as their late 30s in some cases. So, when you think that a woman is typically living to about 85 nowadays in the UK, that means that we've got a good 30 plus years of our life still to go post-menopause. And if you include the perimenopause period as well, then actually that's half of our life that we're going to spend going through perimenopause and post-menopause. So it's really important that we make the most of this period of our life. It's a big chunk of our life. So what do I mean by holistic menopause support? So I describe myself as an holistic menopause practitioner. So it's about seeing the woman as a whole person. So when I work with women, I like to understand everything that's going on for them at this stage in life. So yes, it's about their hormonal health, it's about their wider health, but it's also about what's going on in their lives. What have they got going on with their families? What they've got going on at work? What's going on with their sleep? How they're managing stress? What other challenges are they going through? Because quite a lot of things hit us in midlife. We've got quite a lot of things going on with grown-up children and looking after elderly parents and changes in pressure at work. So, there can be a lot going on. So holistic menopause support is about really taking all of that into consideration, because all of these things can also affect how we experience the menopause. So it's really important to treat the woman holistically. Uh, So If you're not sure whether you're in perimenopause or menopause already, and you probably have got quite a good idea, here are just some ideas of some of the things that you might have said to yourself that are examples to show you that you are in perimenopause. So things like I feel exhausted and I've done nothing. That can be, really common, that feeling of fatigue. Which bit of me is going to hurt today? Sometimes it can feel like a bit of a lottery. It's like almost like random bits of you start to hurt on different days for no given reason. Why do I feel so tearful, angry, anxious? All of these things can come out of seemingly from nowhere and can really be quite strong emotions that maybe we've not experienced before. Am I the only one that's had periods like this? Quite often during the perimenopause transition, our periods can become heavy or more frequent or less frequent before they start to actually wane away towards the end, the latter end of menopause. Why don't I want to have sex with my partner? Am I weird? Loss of libido is another really common symptom of perimenopause. Do I have early dementia? So quite often women will confuse some of the sort of brain fog and memory issues, cognitive issues that they experience during perimenopause as possible early dementia. And the good news there is that no, you're not. Things will get better. Why can't I sleep? That's a really common one. So sleep can be disrupted by lots of things due to hormones, but also things like night sweats as well. So insomnia is a really common one. Should I be taking HRT? Now, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along as well. This is not a session to go into all of the ins and outs of HRT, although I will at the end in the Q&A section, will answer any questions you've got on that, and I will touch on it slightly as we go through this. But yeah, HRT is definitely one of the treatments available to women, or most women, not all women. But yeah, that's a question. A lot of people have questions around HRT and whether it's the right thing for them. Why am I eating less but still putting on weight? So again, weight gain is a really common one, and we'll talk a little bit more as I go through this about how hormones are interplaying with appetite and weight management. So these are just some of the signs of perimenopause, but there really are almost an infinite number of symptoms that women experience during this transition period. It really does depend on the individual woman. It's a different experience for everyone, so there is no one size fits all. I'm going to go into a bit more of a sort of definite list of symptoms a bit later on. But basically, there's such a wide variety that you could be experiencing lots of different things that are actually a sign of perimenopause. So, I wanted to talk a little bit as well about some of the things that you might have heard said about the menopause. Now, thankfully, things are starting to change. We're talking about menopause and perimenopause much more than we ever had, and there's a lot more education and knowledge going on. But there are still some of these kind of myths out there. So it's always a good idea in these sort of sessions just to sort of deal with a few of these. So it's just your hormones, so there's nothing you can do about it. That's absolutely not true. There's lots that we can do about it. We just need to understand what it is that we need and then how we can actually address things. It's just part of getting old, so you just have to get on with it. And I think this is certainly something that our mothers and their mothers will have experienced a lot of. It wasn't talked about at all. It was very much swept under the carpet and we didn't talk about it. But so again, luckily now we are talking about it a lot more than we ever have. Menopause is just about hot flashes. So quite often we refer to them now as hot flashes or hot flushes. Now, as I've just kind of said before, there's so many different things that make up the menopause transition in terms of symptoms. There's a lot more to it than hot flushes. Just because you're not having hot flushes does not mean that you're not going through perimenopause. Menopause only lasts a couple of years. Again, I think I've already started to address that one with the fact that perimenopause can last up to sort of 10 to 15 years. HRT is the only treatment for menopause symptoms. Again, that's absolutely not true. It is most definitely one of the treatments that are available, but it is most definitely not the only thing that's available. And HRT should be a choice for each individual woman. Nobody should be taking anything that they don't feel comfortable with or that isn't right for them. For some people, it's not appropriate. But yeah, it should always be the woman's choice whether they want to go down the HRT route or not. But there are other things available if you don't. And then HRT isn't safe. And again, I say I'm not going into a lot about HRT in today's session, but that is a myth. And HRT, the modern versions of HRT that we have nowadays, are most definitely safe for most women. And so I'm more than happy to answer any questions about that at the end in the Q&A session, or if you want to contact me personally and have a discussion about that one-to-one in your specific circumstances. So basically, yeah, from the minute that we hit puberty as both male and female, our hormones are influencing every single day of our life. We just don't always realize it and we don't always talk about it, but they most definitely are. So, what are hormones? Because we don't really talk about hormones a lot. We were aware of them, but we don't really talk or understand exactly what they are. And I certainly didn't before I trained as a menopause practitioner. So think of hormones as messengers. So when the brain identifies that the body is in need of something to happen, either something to start or something to stop, it will send a message to a particular gland that produces hormones, and there are several glands I'll come on to in a minute. And the glands produce a little hormone, which is a messenger, and that messenger goes along our bloodstream to whichever cell it's being sent to, where there's a receptor waiting for it, and tells it to start doing something or stop doing something. That's basically the role of a hormone, they're messengers. So they're produced by glands in the body. So we've got the reproductive organs, so that's the ovaries in women and the testes in men that produce our reproductive hormones. But we've also got the pituitary gland, which is a small gland just behind the bridge of the nose, which produces hormones. We've got the pineal gland, which is in the very center of the brain that produces hormones. We've got the thyroid, which is placed in the throat. And then we've got the pancreas as well, which also produces insulin and other digestive hormones. So that's not a comprehensive list. There are others, but they are the main glands in the body that produce hormones for us. And each of them have different roles to play. Now, those hormone messengers get sent off to every single cell in the body, and every cell has a receptor for one or more hormones. And this is really key when we get on to talking about the individual hormones, because some of them we might have associated in our minds with a particular role, but actually there may be receptors for that hormone in other parts of the body. So when those hormones are in flux, different parts of the body are going to be influenced. And that's certainly the case when it comes to the reproductive hormones, so estrogen and progesterone. So it can absolutely affect every single part of the body, the brain, the joints, the muscles, the bones, the skin, the digestive system, every other system. So your immune system, your nervous system, your lymphatic system. everything that makes up your human body is affected by hormones. And but also they affect them as well. So there's very much a bit of a feedback loop going on. So hormones send messages to different cells in the body, but they also receive them back as well. So it's a continual feedback loop. So what we really want to be happy and healthy is for our hormonal health to be in balance. We don't want too much or too little of anything. It's all about balance. If we do get into a situation where our glands have gone into a little bit of overdrive, and this can happen if we are constantly sending out the same message over and over again, or if we're in chronic stress, we can get to a point where so many messages are being sent to a particular cell that that receptor will actually shut itself off. It will shut the door and say, no, I'm not letting in anymore. And that's what we then call hormone resistance. And that's obviously not a good place to be either. So, yeah, just another example of why it's so important that we have good hormonal balance, not too much or too little. So now you understand a little bit more about what hormones are and the sort of roles that they play in the body. We'll go into a bit more detail about the individual ones in a minute. Just wonder whether you can think in your head of the hormones that you know about. Just have a think. So generally when I ask that question, especially when it's a menopause session, I said the ones that come up are estrogen and progesterone, because we know generally as women that they're the ones that are involved in our menstrual cycle. They're the ones that mean that we produce an egg, we ovulate, and that egg is released into the fallopian tubes. And then if pregnancy doesn't occur, then progesterone is the hormone that helps to shed the lining of the womb, and that's what leads to our bleed as part of our menstrual cycle. So there are others though, so I don't know if you can think of any others. I've got some on the next slide for you. So there are actually over 100 different hormones in the body, which is quite a lot. But thankfully, we can kind of group them into some sort of main categories. I'm certainly not going to go into all 100 here. But so we've got the reproductive hormones, which I've kind of mentioned already, the main two of those, but there are others. There's growth hormone, there's luteinizing hormone, there's FSH, follicle stimulating hormone as well. So there's a few that are involved in the reproductive system. We also have a number of stress hormones. So these are things like adrenaline and cortisol. So these are the hormones that your body or your brain pumps into your body when you're in the stress response so that you can turn around and fight or flee or freeze. So that fight, flight, or freeze response that we need adrenaline for. And it sends all of your blood to your extremities, to your arms and legs, so you're ready to run or to fight, and takes energy away from your core. So it turns off your digestive system and things like that. So that is adrenaline and cortisol that are mainly responsible for that stress response. And these are the things that can give you sort of palpitations and that feeling of shallow breathing when we're in a stress state. And let's face it, especially as women in midlife, most of us are in a state of chronic stress most of the time. We also have a group we refer to as our sleep hormones. So these are things like tryptophan, serotonin, and melatonin. So these are the hormones that are part of our circadian rhythms. So when our body experiences light in the morning, it releases hormones that help us to wake up and be alert. And then those hormones wane over the day, sorry. And then other hormones, melatonin, rise in the evening to help us to go to sleep. We also have a group of hormones that I like to call the emotional hormones. So these are things like endorphins and oxytocin and serotonin to some extent as well is part of that. So these are those feel-good hormones that we get when we do exercise or when we stroke our pet or cuddle our child or anything like that. Yeah, it's those feel-good hormones that just boost our mood and make us feel good. So that's a really quick whistle-stop tour of some of the sort of main groups of hormones. So I just wanted to ask a couple of sort of true or false type questions. Again, just to bust some myths, especially around the reproductive hormones. So, true or false? Estrogen levels fall in women during the perimenopause. Now, that's actually a bit of a trick question because overall, over that period, yes, estrogen levels do fall, but they don't fall evenly. It's much more of a fluctuation. So they rise, they fall at different points with a gradual decline over time. And they don't necessarily decline either at the same rate as progesterone, which does decline more steadily. So we can get into a situation where we've actually got estrogen dominance. It's also the case that there are different types of estrogen. So, although the main type of estrogen that we have pre-perimenopause does wane, sorry, I keep saying that. Then we did the other two types, estradiol, is the most dominant type of estrogen post-menopause. So we do still have some estrogen. It's not like it all just disappears on us when we hit menopause. It's just a different type and it doesn't have quite the same potency. So, true or false again? Women don't have the hormone testosterone and men don't have estrogen. Now, that's false in both cases. So, women do have lower levels of testosterone than men, but we do definitely have some. And that's the main thing that gives us our libido. And men do have low levels of estrogen as well. So that's just some quick myth busting on hormones. So next slide. So let's look at some of the symptoms that we might get if some of those groups of hormones we've just talked about are out of balance. So when our reproductive hormones are out of balance, the main thing that it affects are our periods, obviously. That's the whole point of this perimenopausal system, is that our periods are starting to come to an end. But again, they don't just stop overnight. So during perimenopause, women can often find that their periods become further apart. They might become heavier or lighter. It very much depends. Quite often in early perimenopause, women can actually experience quite heavy periods. That was certainly my case. In my early 40s, I had some really heavy clotted periods and quite painful as well. So it's just about knowing what's normal for you and then recognizing when things have changed for you and also not expecting that it's going to be a steady ride. Things are going to change and fluctuate quite a bit. So that's partly as well because of progesterone. And we know how it is involved in the shedding of the womb lining at the end of the menstrual cycle. And its main job really is to protect that womb lining in case of pregnancy, and then to shed it if no pregnancy happens. But what we know less about is the fact that also it has quite a big effect on sleep as well. So it was only later on, after I sort of got more into this world and understood more, that I understood that at the same time I was having those really heavy periods and heavy clots, I was also struggling quite a lot with insomnia. And both of those could be put down to reducing progesterone levels. But although I got some treatment for, well, for necessarily for my heavy periods, um, but not necessarily for my insomnia, all they offered me was some sleeping pills, which didn't work. Um, then at no point did anybody mention that actually this might be perimenopause and that these two things could be put down to this reduction in progesterone. And that's quite a common experience for women, that they don't always get told everything that they need to know. We talked a little bit about testosterone as well. Follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which again are involved in the reproductive system. They stimulate ovulation, so that we produce the egg from progesterone, and then shed the lining again. It's part of the shedding of the lining of the womb if no pregnancy happens. We also have growth hormone, which is obviously to help the baby to grow, but also growth hormone is important as we hit puberty in terms of growth spurts and things like that as we grow. But also even in adults, it's quite important for bone health and for things like hair growth and things like that. So, what are the symptoms of reproductive hormone imbalance? So, I've talked a little bit about some of them. So, period problems around your period are the most common. But what's probably less well known is the fact that lots of parts of the body have estrogen and progesterone receptors in them. So, these fluctuating hormone levels can have effects on our cardiovascular system, joints. They can cause joint and muscle pain. They can lead to bone weakness and osteoporosis. They can also be implicated in brain fog and memory and cognitive issues because there are estrogen receptors in the brain. So it's not all about, our periods, hormonal imbalance in the reproductive hormones. It has a lot to do with many, many different parts of the body. So let's have a look now at the stress hormones, mainly the adrenaline and the cortisol. So what are the symptoms here? These are mainly produced by our adrenals and the pituitary glands. And these can get really fatigued during high levels of stress, which a lot of us experience on an ongoing basis. So it's quite common in women in midlife for our adrenals and our pituitary glands to be seriously fatigued because they're just overworking and overcompensating all the time because they're just producing so much stress hormone. And this can lead to things like chronic fatigue syndrome and other autoimmune diseases as well. It can also lead to things like anxiety and depression, and yeah, as well as that general feeling of fatigue and even burnout. A little known fact as well is actually that cortisol particularly is involved in weight gain. So when we've got high cortisol levels in the bloodstream, our bodies actually start to store fat, and we start to have more cravings for sugary and high carb foods. So actually high cortisol levels can lead to weight gain. So let's look now at sleep hormones. Sorry, I'm throwing a lot of information at you here. I hope you're keeping up with me. Um, so yeah, we talked about tryptophan, serotonin, and melatonin. And obviously, the main thing here is that it affects our sleep. So, insomnia is really common, particularly I see it a lot amongst my clients. Um, that insomnia is actually classed as having had disturbed sleep for at least 3 nights a week for at least 3 months. And I think, most people will fall into that category. We reckon that at any one time, 1 in 3 people could be having sleep issues, and 1 in 10 will be experiencing chronic insomnia. And I think that rises in the sort of perimenopausal to postmenopausal women age group as well. It's certainly quite high. And obviously, we all know what the symptoms are of, an imbalance in sleep hormone. And when we're not sleeping well, we feel tired and fatigued. We can have low mood. We feel more anxious, more angry, more irritable. Um, we recover more slowly from illness when we're tired. Um, we have poor cognitive function, so our memory isn't as good. We're not as good at doing, maths problems and working things out. And again, it's related to weight gain. So when we're tired, our body thinks that we're going to need more energy, so it stores fat and makes us crave those sugary and high carb snacks. So yeah, another one for weight gain. We're going to look now at digestive hormones. And so some of the main digestive hormones are ghrelin. So this is the hormone that gives us that push to eat. It stimulates appetite, gives us cravings. We've also got insulin. A lot of people don't think of insulin as a hormone, but it is produced by the pancreas. And the role of insulin is to help us to take energy from food and use it in the body. And then we've got leptin as well, which is what helps us to stop feeling hungry. So it kind of switches off our appetite when we've eaten enough. But actually, when we've got hormonal imbalance, we can actually get leptin resistance, which is when we've had too much insulin and too much leptin in the bloodstream. And that system just goes haywire and doesn't work properly, which is when we get problems like obesity and overeating, because we're not getting those signals to stop. Also, the thyroid hormones can be classed in here as well under digestion. So we can have an underactive or an overactive thyroid. And when those imbalances are in place, it can lead to either weight gain or weight loss, um, and severe fatigue, mood problems, and again, anxiety and depression. So, yeah, things like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, so heart attack and stroke, all of these things become a higher risk if we've got an imbalance in our digestive hormones. I've mentioned all of those things, so that's everything. And then we've got the emotional hormones. So I alluded to these earlier. So we've got dopamine, which is the reward hormone. So that bit of an uplift that we feel when we've done something really well or we get a bit of a treat. We've got oxytocin, which is the happy or love hormone. We've got endorphins, which is those feel-good hormones we get when we've done exercise. We get that bit of a high. But also we can get these things from other rewards as well. So quite often, chocolate will give us that same rush as doing exercise. So what are some of the symptoms of an imbalance in our emotional hormones? So it can be low mood if we've not got enough of these hormones, obviously, because they're the feel-good hormones, and things like anxiety and depression, again, these keep coming up. And just that general feeling of meh, that can be quite common. We can have a lack of purpose, like we're drifting in life, low self-worth, and just a feeling that, we're just not good enough. It's something that we as women, experience probably throughout our lives. Quite a lot of us do. And it certainly comes up a lot in my coaching. But, those can be exacerbated during this kind of time of hormonal fluctuation. Next slide. There we go. So, There's a lot to take in here. It all sounds doom and gloom at the minute, but bear with me. We are going to change things. It's not all bad. So all of those things can be out of balance during perimenopause, and maybe some of those you recognize in yourself already, but not all of them. So here's a bit more of a comprehensive symptom list. And when you see quite how many different symptoms there are, you can see why sometimes it does feel quite random. So I've definitely had clients who've described it as like a bit of a lottery. It's like, right, which one's coming out of the bag today? What we getting today? Because it can really feel like that because it depends on which hormones are out of balance and which parts of the body that imbalance is affecting. But as I say, they mainly fall into some overarching categories. So these symptoms either affect our brain, our body, our sleep, our skin, our mood, or our sense of self. And as I've said before, all of these things we're dealing with at the same time, they coincide with all the other things that are going on for us as midlife women, with our careers, with our family situations and responsibilities. So yeah, quite a lot to go on. So have a look at that list of symptoms, take a screenshot if you'd like to, and yeah, see which of those maybe apply to you. Okay, so what can we do about it? Why should we? Why do we need to do something about these hormonal balances? Why do we need to take responsibility of this and take control? Well, for one reason, because it can feel like we are out of control. It can feel like we've completely lost touch with our bodies and with our brains, and we don't actually know ourselves anymore or how to be in control. So it's really great for us to be able to take back that control. And it's all about two things. It's about easing those symptoms now because we deserve, through our perimenopause and menopause transition, to feel as well as we possibly can. We don't have to put up with these things. So it's about reducing the side effects of the symptoms now, but also it's about protecting our long-term health. So as I said earlier, we could well have 30 years plus of our lives still to live, and we want to live those years in health and happiness and independence for as long as we possibly can. So by acting now to deal with some of those hormonal imbalances, we're going to be able to do that for much more longer. So I'd like to invite you just for a minute, just so I'm going to come away from the presentation and just want you to just gently close your eyes. And I just want you to think for a minute. I want you to imagine you when you're 85, 90 years old. Who do you want to be? Who is that woman? Where is she? What is she doing? How is she living her life? Now, I know I found this quite powerful when I did this for myself, and I could imagine myself living a really independent life. Independence is something that's really important to me. It's one of my core values. I want to be able to still go and do my shopping and carry my shopping bags. I want to be able to get up out of my chair without going, ouch. I want to be as healthy and happy as I possibly can. Um, we obviously there's some things that we don't have control over, but for as much as we do have control over it, I want to be healthy and happy in my older age for as long as possible so that I can live life to the full and do all of the traveling and spend the time with the people I love for as long as I possibly can. So I hope you found that useful. So when we talk about the sort of things that we can do now to take responsibility for our hormonal health, it's not just our hormonal health that we're looking at, it's our health in general. So we're talking about reducing our risk of heart attack and stroke, reducing our risk of dementia, maintaining our bone health so that we can stay agile and active, maintain our joint health and muscle strength so we can still carry those shopping bags and play with our grandchildren. And importantly, it's about preventing falls as well. So we know that in later life, one of the biggest things that leads to early death are falls in the elderly. So by having that bone strength and that muscle and joint flexibility, we're going to prevent falls as much as we possibly can. It's all about keeping our independence and enjoying life in older age. Right, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty then. What can we do? Let's turn that frown upside down because it's been quite a lot of bad news tonight, isn't it? I'm aware of that, but it's not all bad news. There are definitely things that we can do now. Obviously, I mentioned earlier about HRT. That is one of the symptoms, but there are lots of other lifestyle changes that we can make now, whether we want to go down the HRT route or not, that can help us. So the best thing we can do to begin with is to get to know our own bodies, to actually understand what's going on for us. So many of us ignore what our bodies are telling us. So, our body's telling us it needs us to rest, and we just push on through and keep going. That is so common. But we need to keep a balance, and that means also keeping a balance between being active and being at rest, because that rest is really important for allowing our glands, our pituitary gland particularly, and our adrenals to also rest and not produce too much hormone. It's also about understanding what's normal for us. So, you know, check in with your own body, but also if you're not sure, speak to friends who are maybe also going through the same thing, or speak to a menopause expert like myself and just check in and say, is this normal? Should I be experiencing this? No one tells us this stuff unless we ask, do they? We're still not really very good at talking about it, better than we were, but there's still a way to go. So, yeah, don't just put up with things. I think if you take nothing away from today other than that, it's that because as women, we so often push our own needs to the bottom of the list. We're so busy looking after everybody else. But actually, this matters for our health and for our ability to keep looking after everyone else as well. So don't just put up with things. See what can be done. So in terms of treatments, yeah, I mentioned HRT. That is an option for most people. It may not be if you've had an estrogen dominant cancer, such as a breast cancer or ovarian cancer that is estrogen dominant. But yeah, that it is an option for most women who are not in that category. And it can have some really great benefits for some women as well. So it's been shown to actually protect us from losing bone density. So it protects us from future osteoporosis. And it's actually really protective for our cardiovascular system as well. So HRT can help in protecting us from heart attack and stroke, which actually are the biggest killers in women post-menopause. So it's not, not to be sniffed at. That's quite important, a protection. It can also help sometimes, but not always, with managing some of the other symptoms that we might experience during this period. It's not always straightforward. It sometimes takes a bit of experimentation to get the right dose and things like that. But yeah, if you think that HRT might be an option for you, then yeah, talk to an expert, talk to your doctor, talk to a menopause practitioner, and get some support on that. But whether you decide to go down the HRT route or not, there are things that we can do with lifestyle. So, in terms of our diet, We can change our attitude. I think many of us who are in our sort of 40s and 50s now, we've grown up with the diet culture, which is really not helpful for us at this stage of life. Dieting just puts us into stress response, makes our cortisol levels higher, and it's not going to help us to lose weight. What we need to be looking at is nourishing our body and giving our body the nourishment it needs to be strong and to be healthy at this stage of life. So it's all about good nutrition, a good microbiome, and gut health. So we're nourishing, not dieting. We can't get away with what we did in our 20s, but we can do things differently. And actually, it's more fun because we get to eat more things, just the right things. We can also prioritize rest and sleep. I can't say this enough. If you are experiencing any kind of insomnia or sleep issues, then please get that addressed as a matter of urgency. It's the biggest thing that you can do for your health in midlife and menopause. And learn to prioritize rest. And again, that's something that I help women with quite regularly because we find it quite hard, don't we? We've kind of been conditioned to believe that if we're doing nothing, then we're being lazy. There's always more to do on the to-do list. So we feel this pressure to be always on the move. But actually, it's one of the biggest causes of hormonal imbalance is when we don't take enough rest and get enough sleep, and can lead to things like autoimmune conditions and other health conditions later down the road. Find ways to manage stress. So, as I said earlier, this can be a really stressful time of life for women for lots of different reasons. So, it's really important that you find ways to manage that stress in a positive way. And that could be through things like exercise or meditation or yoga or breathing techniques or holistic treatments and massage. There are loads and loads of different ways. There are only a few. So it's about finding what works for you, but find a way to manage your stress on a regular basis. One of my particular favorites, and I would say this because I'm also a Reiki practitioner, is Reiki. It's amazing for resetting your nervous system and managing stress. But also, I offer mindfulness and yeah, other massage techniques. So yeah, just find what works for you. Setting boundaries is really important as well. So we find it really hard to prioritize ourselves, but seeing boundaries not as these immovable objects that shut people out, but actually are the things that protect us, protect our peace, protect our calm, and more importantly, protect our health. So we can get some help with setting realistic boundaries. Move and strengthen your body. So again, this is about finding what works for you. I'm most definitely not a gym buddy. But moving your body, keeping it strong is so important if we want to be that older lady who is still active and mobile and independent in her 80s and 90s. So find something that you enjoy doing and that's going to help move your body and strengthen your muscles and joints. And then foster connections and find purpose. So if you feel like you've lost a little bit of yourself, you've forgotten who you were, maybe before you had children or before you were in the career that you're in now, you're not quite sure who you are anymore, what it is that you enjoy. If you're isolated from seeing lots of people because you may be working from home, then it's all about fostering those connections and finding your purpose in life. And again, that's something that I can help with. So, yeah, lots of things that we can do. But the main thing is to stop putting ourselves at the bottom of our to-do list and actually start to prioritize some of these things. Nearly there now. All right. So, how can I help you with all of these things? You don't have to figure it all out alone. So there's quite a lot of information there that I've thrown at it. What I can help you to do is to actually find out and work out what needs fixing or addressing right now. What's a priority for you? and then come up with a step-by-step plan of how you're going to make improvements in that area. I'm not just going to tell you what to do, but show you how to do it and support you along the way so you're not on your own to do it. And there's two really simple ways, and here we go, that you can get started with that. So I have a midlife and MOT quiz that you can complete and fill in, and it's a bit of a sort of menopause symptom checker, and it gives you an idea of where you're at in midlife and menopause, and just makes you start to think about what symptoms you are actually experiencing. And then there's an invitation at the end of that quiz if you'd like to book a call with me, a free call, just to go through it and work out what is your priority and what you can start to do about it. And even if you don't complete the quiz, you can book that call with me. I also have a 4-month signature program where I can actually lead you through that. So if we identify that you actually need some help with sleep, then I can help you work through that, or whether it's with stress management or finding your purpose, or you need some help with nutrition, or a bit of all of these things. It's very much tailored to your needs. But that's something that we could talk about on a call and see whether that will be right for you. It won't be right for everyone. It may be that you just need that free call just to set you off on the right track and get you doing some really positive habits. Because it's all about those things that we do, the small changes that we do, but consistently. It's not about a huge overhaul of our lives. Because that's just not going to be sustainable. We're all really busy people. We don't need more stuff to add to our to-do list. We just need some simple tweaks that we can make that are going to help us to feel better as we get older. Right, so that's the end of my presentation. I have got, and I will just get the links for you and post them in the, there we go, chat in case you want to do the quiz. And then we'll go into the Q&A if anybody's got any questions, but I'm not going to record that bit, so I'll just stop screen sharing first. There we go. I'll just post this in the chat. And that's the quiz. And I'll get you the link for the call. That was not copying. Okay. And that's the link to book a call with me, a free call. I'm going to stop the recording now, and then if anybody wants to come off mute or wants to write in the chat if they've got any questions, and if you are watching on the replay and you do have any questions, then please do get in touch with me. You can email me, caroline@thepeacockretreat.co.uk, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions outside of this session too.